Welcome back to another episode of the Frustrated CEO podcast. My name is Patrick Lyons. I am one of your co-hosts. I'm here with, we're down a co-host today. We're down Leb Tannenbaum. We'll have Leb back with us next time. But my favorite colleague is here. Patsy, good to see you again.
As always, Patrick. Thank you.
Yeah. Today, listener, we are welcoming Chris Wise to the podcast. So Chris is a dynamic entrepreneur, visionary leader, and someone who's renowned for his pioneering work in law, technology, and community development. He's a former special warfare combat crewman in the U.S. Navy, current founder of two companies, the award-winning Wise and Associates family law firm with multiple Eastern U.S. locations, and then founder of Greenlight Sales, which is a conversational AI and workflow automation company. Chris is a writer, a speaker who's been featured in several publications such as Forbes, Fortune, Entrepreneur Magazine, and he's the second best looking person on today's show next to, obviously, Patsy Fian. Chris is here to talk about innovation, AI, building and leading high performance teams, and frankly, anything else that we decide to talk about. Chris, welcome to the Frustrated CEO podcast.
Thank you for having me. I need to write this down. That was a good intro.
Pretty good, right? I can be your publicist if you need one.
Thank you.
All right. So, Chris, in preparation for today, as is often the case, we meet with our guests beforehand to kind of frame the show. And what came up, in addition to the things I mentioned that we're going to talk about today, on a personal note, you grew up a huge hockey fan. And you even played AAA hockey. And if I recall correctly, you said you might have gone pro if you had been willing to lose your teeth. But that was kind of where you draw the line, right? I remember that. Also, and why that resonated with me is I'm also a big hockey fan. One of the things we often hear from leaders is how in the formative years they learned the concepts or the discipline from just different things that sports, military, you've been in both. Talk about what some of those experiences taught you as, in those formative years to prepare you for the roles that you have today.
Yeah, I think it's loving the process, right? It's a long, long journey to get from starting something to hopefully successful, and how's that defined, and all of those good things. So, I mean, the start is definitely not the finish. So going through developing, going through and, every little thing matters. I mean, from sports, military, business, the smallest change can have such a major effect, and being able to monitor that and take that, information in and being able to adjust and go from there is, really what makes a difference.
And I'm curious, in our intro, Patrick talked about your pioneering work and that you're an innovator and entrepreneur. I would say many, if not all, pioneers we've met look at a much longer horizon, much further out than the rest of the workforce. And sometimes we can lose people. What do you do to kind of point out the horizon, but bring people along?
Yeah. So that's a great question. I'm definitely, I think 10, 15, 20 years out. And what we do now is just, I don't even know. It's tough to track daily goals when you keep looking that far out. I mean, something a good friend of mine told me once, and I've kept with me this entire time really is, remember who's going to carry the caskets is what he would always say. Remember who's going to carry the casket. And so as you're going through this, journey of maybe startup all the way to now it's starting to get steam and you're starting to expand, whether it be to the state or all of the states, international, remember what matters is really what he's getting at. And I think finding a team that shares that vision, that can see the larger picture and just believe with you, and then turn around and remember that the little things, because things are going to go wrong, drastically wrong, and you're not going to be ready for it. But remembering at that time, who's going to carry carry the casket, who's going to be there with you all the way through. And remember that, that's what matters at the end of the day. That's what will get you to that goal instead of it just being written on a board somewhere.
Thanks.
I also mentioned in your bio or in the introduction, the focus of one of your companies is AI. That's clearly a big topic right now. Everybody's trying to figure it out. Companies are trying to figure out how to use it to make things faster, more efficient, more profitable. I think employees are concerned about it replacing them. I think consumers are trying to figure out. I mean, I'm out of my league. This is your area of expertise, but your consumers are trying to figure out sometimes how to use it, right? And in some cases, they don't want to use it. They want the good old fashioned person, right? The relationship. Talk about the work that you're doing. One of the things that grabbed me that I thought would be interesting to talk about today. Talk about the work you're doing, but you also talked about how you're trying to streamline it, helping not let it take over their jobs, but using it to address the pain points, if that makes sense. It's kind of a question, sort of.
Yeah.
Maybe a team rather than a question.
Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, the reality is there's a lot of people who are scared about AI. They're not sure. They don't really know the history behind it. They don't know how long it's really been around. I mean, if we think of just the search engine and going and typing something out and then it gives you those suggestions, I mean, that is a form of AI. And, I just don't think we really think about it in that way anymore. And so because of it, obviously, people are scared about their jobs. And also I think everyone has the Terminator, vision in their mind where they're like, oh my God, is this happening? What we focus on is the outcome, right? So you mentioned it earlier, the pain points. We want to solve those pain points, and we want to focus on, different workflows to get to that outcome, to become more efficient. And this isn't replacing people. That's not our intent whatsoever. Our intent is how do we get it to where you, the person, are working on the higher level tasks, the things that really we need you to, and maybe not so much the things that can be automated or addressed without, you getting exhausted from answering that question for the 300th time today. Instead, let's automate it. Let's figure out a way to do this to where, you can verify, but also, work on the things that the company really needs you to work on, because that's what you're there for. You're not there for just, can you answer the typical A, B, and C question? You're here, for a reason, larger picture. Let's get you working on that, and let's let technology do what it does and help, solve kind of the smaller level problems.
I mean, we've seen that happen before with some of the other revolutions that happened, right? In the history of the workforce, right? Like the Industrial Revolution. They're different, where yes, some jobs were eliminated, but that didn't eliminate the person. That eliminated the function, and then you saw the evolution of the task, right? Or the evolution of the job into something different, something higher. And so I'm asking, it sounds like that's kind of what you're talking about, that you're talking about automating or using AI for the lower level things. This is consistent with, I think about, we've had a guest on a few times, Ben Pring, talked a lot about retraining your workforce to focus more on that customer experience, on like the etiquette, the relationship building, and using AI to replace a lot of those menial tasks. So it's the evolution of work as opposed to replacing people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think, one of my core beliefs is that every business, regardless of your industry, you are in the hospitality industry. I mean, you have to have customer service. You can't get away with treating customers and people poorly and just think I've got the best software, so I'm going to win every time, or whatever, just fill in the blank on whatever the industry is. So, I think there's a big push right now on, do we retrain a certain segment of the workforce if that's, where AI is forcing people to go? I think that, we're not, I think this goes back to the Terminator comment, right? Like, I think we go way, way, way into the future of, oh my God, this is where it's taking us, instead of stepping back and going, wait a minute, why am I using this in the first place? Like, what is this doing? And then when you see that actual, result, this is built to answer these type of questions, or to book appointments, or, fill in the blank here, to reach out to people, to give them an update on where their status is in their case, if it's a law firm, or something of that nature. Those are things that are workflows. I mean, we've had workflows since the dawn of computers, early 2000s. We're building workflows. So this is just a step up in that, and saying, okay, we have the workflows now. How do we get it to be smart enough to know, instead of always using the word trash, we can use the word waste or garbage, and it not panic and go, wait, that's not the first word. So what do we do now? That's where we're going with this.
So you're talking about how, we've had workflows in one way or the other for a long time, but we're also talking about human beings who have strong reactions and emotions to either change or where this is taking you. And I imagine you're constantly, or frequently, or at least when the project gets started, bridging those two places. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So, I'll use an example. I have a executive assistant who helps me book appointments, schedule, answers my emails, those kind of things. I think I know what she deals with constantly, and the issues that she has to figure out and overcome. And, I'll just leave it at that. I think I know, but I'm pretty sure I don't. And so I have to go to her and say, hey, what's the problem with this? Or, are you seeing the same thing? Or what issues are you dealing with? What are you, quote unquote, wasting your time with, if you want to say wasting time? But I think you get where I'm going with it. And she's able to say, that doesn't really matter. That's not really a problem. But this is a big problem. And I'm spending a lot of time on this. And if we can solve that, I can focus on these things that I'm asking her to really do, and to focus on and help me with. Walking through that process, especially on new projects, going and saying, look, this is not meant to remove the development committee of a nonprofit. That's not the intent. The intent is, what projects do you have, and how can it support you? Not the other way around. I don't want you just becoming the support on the back end of it, and us saying, well, what does this person really know? How long have they been doing it? No, I want it to be the other way around. I want it to be, all right, you're trying to accomplish this goal. Fantastic. What are the problems that you have dealt with since you've been in it for the longest time? And then let's see how we can support it, and support you to get you back into doing what you love to do and why you're there in the first place. And these, kind of minute things, or things that are causing significant problems or continual problems, we can address and help support you with.
Chris, one of the things that I mentioned, a couple of passions that I know you have. We talked about hockey growing up. Obviously, you're involved in multiple ventures, so there's a passion for entrepreneurship or business. I also know you have a passion for work-life balance, which, right, you've got a couple of young kids, you have a family. There are listeners who struggle with the work-life balance, and they have one business, and you have two, and then another venture, right? So, but I also know you are very intentional about work-life balance. I know you've made lifestyle changes, so you can talk about that. And then how do you balance? How are you so intentional about the work-life balance to keep from burning out?
Yeah, I think, well, that's two very different questions. How do you deal with the work-life balance? I don't think anybody's perfect. I think the system that I have that works for me might just work for me. I don't know. I'm very intentional with time. I'm very cognizant of time. So I look, as I expand my businesses, as we've gone in, different industries, and have, quote unquote, been successful in those, to look at, what is it that I'm doing? Can someone else be doing this? And, can they do it better? And if so, how do I get them to join the team so that I can focus on the next problem? And then, just continuously replace myself, for lack of better words. Mm-hmm. And so, Dan Martell wrote a book about this. He's an amazing individual, just person and business owner. But he wrote quite a bit about buying back your time and the importance of it, and how to build that out to where you can do this in any industry. And I mean, it's something that I follow almost to the T, where I look at it and go, okay, to your point, I've got little kids. I don't want to miss anything. You only get a one shot at it. There's only, the first T-ball game, or the first, whatever, dance recital or practice. And I don't want to miss it. And it's personal to me. And if it means that I'm, miss out on a meeting or have to reschedule, or maybe, quote unquote, success takes a little bit longer, to me, that's okay. In the long run, I think you got to make that decision as a business owner. If getting to the end state as fast as possible is the most important thing to you, I think we're going to you're going to run into a lot of problems, because things are outside of your control, and you have to adjust to those things. And if it's just continuously at the expense of family or friends, or what you find to be important, it's really tough to, because I don't think it's a secret to listeners or anyone here. It's tough. It's really, really tough. And, you're always trying to figure it out, and you're doing the best that you can. And there's no playbook for this. Everything that comes up, I'm like, wait, isn't there something out there that I could cheat off of? I mean, is there a cheat sheet somewhere that everyone's keeping for themselves? And then as far as burnout, that's the second part of this. I think if you love what you do, and you can define what it is that you love, some people love the work itself, and they're fantastic and amazing solopreneurs, and they're the ones that are the smartest people at whatever it is that they're doing. And then I think as you scale, you have to, if that's your desire, you have to learn that you can't always be the person with all the answers. You have to find people who are smarter and love that part, whether it be, I'll use the law firm for an example. I find attorneys who love family law. They're interested in it. They want to know the ins and outs. How are the states different? How are the feds involved? I can't teach that love. I can help foster it, but I can't give you that. And so that's what I look for. I look for that passion. And if you have that passion for it, then you're not going to burn out on it. You may burn out on other tasks, like, I get exhausted of scheduling or reading emails. There's a million emails. So I find someone who can do it a lot better than me and more efficiently, and then let them do that. And then I can focus on the thing that I love. I personally love running companies. I love scaling. I love seeing, I love the journey of it, but I love seeing kind of that 30-year picture, and knowing that this little thing that I'm doing today, even though it may not mean anything, in the long run, really is going to have an effect. This is I was just talking about this earlier today. I was making a joke about cleaning the kitchen. We have a little kitchen here, and there's like coffee grains on, like everywhere else. It drives you crazy, and they're tiny, and you just can never get rid of them. That cleaning that little bit, whoever did it, that one person who did it, means nothing in the grand scheme of things. Like, it's really tough for me to draw a line and be like, hey, look, this is how it connected the dots. The reality is that little bit meant that they cared enough to make it look, not look, but make it, I'm trying to think. It's like the ownership mentality, right? Yeah, it doesn't mean that in the long run, but this little bit, if I clean this, I'm also going to think about this little thing over here in this project that maybe it's not a big deal, but mentioning it and tracking it and caring enough about the littlest thing is going to, in the long run, have a massive effect, because it's that mentality that you can't really teach. I wish I could. I've been trying forever. to sit down with people and say, this is how you do it. But you have to really want to do that. And that passion or that belief has to be personal, and you just can't, instill that personally for someone.
But it does sound like you create that a culture. So you have individuals, but you create a culture where you can continuing to have the big picture, but then paying attention to the little details. How would you describe the culture that you promote?
I think the culture that I try to promote is, I hate when people say open door culture, because I feel like it's a cop out answer where it's like, oh, it's open door. We love to just chat. I think the better way to say it, and what I try to do is being self-aware that you don't have the answers. You don't always have the right answer. You don't have the best answer. And if you can promote that within, and everyone come to the table and say, here's what I think, and this is why I think it, but then be open to understanding and accepting that maybe you're wrong. Maybe that's not the best way. I mean, that is, we have, a couple weekly meetings, and that is what we focus on is, I may not know what's going on in Nashville. I'm not physically there in that office. And so I think this is how you should run it. But if you think differently and you're there, maybe and I don't. And being able to accept that and not always think that your answer or your way is the right way. That's the culture I'm looking for. I'm looking for, I hate saying open door because it's one of those things. But being open enough to realize that maybe you don't have the answer and someone else does. And as long as you can have that open conversation and be willing to accept that, there's other ways and maybe those are the better ways.
Great.
Then, I think that's how great companies are built, because you're able to just take it in, and then you don't have one thought train. You have multiple trains out there that are helping get you to where you want to go ultimately.
Yeah, I would call that just what you just described, very different than an open door. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, good. Because I can't
different.
I'm like, no.
Now, one of the things that we talked about this in the conversation to prepare for today, and that is, and I think it supports what you were just describing, where you've got people who have the ideas that they can bring to the table. You talked about hiring people who are overqualified to do the job, and that results in amazing results. And that your feeling is that helps you scale faster. Talk about that, because I think there are some who are concerned for a variety of reasons that might, that hiring people who are overqualified, maybe they won't stay as long, or maybe that creates, they're instantly not going to be happy with the role that they have. And they're going to be wanting more. How do you make that work for you?
So I don't particularly look at qualifications per se. I look at people. I mean, that'd be the best way for me to describe this is when I meet with someone who I'm, thinking maybe I can get them on the team and to do something, fill a role that we really need. I'm paying more attention to that person. I think, character, that's number one on my list. And the reality is we all have these vast experiences. They're so different. I find it so fascinating. We all grow up different, and our paths are so different, and the experiences, and there's things that I'm never going to have to deal with. I'm just not. And there's things that those that, I hire may have had to deal with that, or have maybe will never have to deal with that I will. And so, I look for, can this person, do they have the character to fill the role? What are those experiences? We have all these horror stories. I mean, everyone does. Just ask anybody who's worked anywhere, and they'll tell you about these crazy things that have happened. And so as an employer, your hope is that, hey, that's never us. We're never going to have any of those crazy stories. But the reality is there's probably something that you're just like, what in the world? And so having that and learning from them, those experiences, and then trying to incorporate, whatever lessons learned from it. I think, as far as hiring overqualified, everyone who works with me directly is going to be so excited that you said that. I'm imagining the conversation that I'm going to have where they're like, yes. But I mean, I'll give you a really good example. We have someone who works in our Louisville office, and this individual is a student. They've overcome some tremendous adversity in their life, which is just so impressive to me. And they have no legal experience at all. They've never worked at a law firm. As a matter of fact, the previous job was at a movie theater. And I had a fantastic conversation with them. And we were just talking about the horror stories of working in a movie theater and, trying to see how that relates to the law firm, right? Like, how do you draw those lines? What's fascinating is, when do you get there? How late do you stay? What is that environment like? How are you treated sometimes? Because people sometimes can go really off the deep end.
Yep.
And how do you handle those? And I would say in the last 3 years, he's probably our top legal assistant. And some of the individuals who have filled that role are paralegals. Some of them are law students who went on to be lawyers in other firms. Some of them are lawyers today here. So what's fascinating about it is, if I were to go in and only get, 10, 15 year experience paralegals to fill that role, I'm not sure I would have really the success of the law firm. I don't think I'd have the trajectory that we've had so quickly, mainly because you just can't do that by yourself. And you're right. I mean, some people, sure, they might say I'm overqualified. Maybe it's a money thing. I know a lot of employers kind of cringe at it at first. They're like, oh no, if it's all overqualified, then how am I going to be able to afford that kind of workforce? And one of the beautiful things about coming from, we started the law firm. I started the law firm in 2020, right? I mean, May was our first day, May 8th. So right in the middle of
Good
COVID.
timing, yeah.
Yeah, fascinating.
There were a lot of divorces during the pandemic, weren't there?
Yeah, because all the courts were open. Yeah, you get creative, right? I mean, that's the best part. That was I think being a really early in the process of a startup. That's what gets everybody so excited, is that creativity at that moment. And as you expand and grow, I think what you try your best, to not lose is that creativity, but it's also one of the hardest things to keep. And so, going through that, and I don't know, I think not losing the creativity is paramount. And then again, to circle back to what I was saying earlier, to realize that you may not have the right answers to let other people come in. But I mean, I know we've spoken about this. I convinced a owner of a, how do I say it nicely, an older commercial building to rent out their broom closet to me and just let me have the conference room for free. So, I mean, that's how I started, was $50 a month in rent, just so I could be in a broom closet and not at home with the chaos of just the house. And then, the amount of funny stories about people walking in like they're going into a law firm, and nope, it's a closet. Like you're right there on top of each other. But that creativity, that's what gets so exciting. And it's in every industry. I think if, as people are either early on or further along in the road, everyone has those moments where you kind of reminisce about those early days and how fun that was and how creative it was. And holding on to that is, that's the hardest thing, but that's what's so much fun.
So what have you done? What are some of the things you have done to continue to foster that? You know, so I don't usually put creativity in law firms together, so that is interesting. So
Yeah, no, I don't think anybody does.
No,
The industry itself is like, no, we are not creative. Don't do that to us. I think you have to challenge the status quo. I think you have to find whatever your core beliefs are and why you got into it in the first place. For me, and I joke about it, but you know, I don't think I have any like lawyer friends. I had maybe like one or two real good lawyer friends. I just don't. I came into the industry thinking, gosh, there's these 5 things that I really, really hate about the industry. And a good friend of mine and mentor at the time said, well, instead of complaining about it, you could always go and change it. And I thought, well, yeah, that's true. And he said, what's the worst that's going to happen? They're going to tell you no. I mean, at least you went out and tried. And so that's what catapulted it was, okay, well, let me change these things that I don't like. I don't like the billing. I don't like how we, attorneys tend to think they're always the smartest people in the room. Somehow they talk down to everybody. Like there's all these stereotypes and, sitting back going, how do we change that? How do we have conversations? What if we just gave them the information? I'll never forget one of the exciting creative things that we did was I got frustrated because, there's in Kentucky, there are state forms that you can use to get a divorce, right? That is an example. And I found out that a lot of these law firms were charging, thousands of dollars to just have that conversation. And I was going, it's free. The form is free. It's on the internet. And I got so frustrated with it because, I'm talking to individuals who are like, yeah, I've spent $3,000 trying to get this accomplished. And I'm like, it's free. Like it's just bad marketing that the state doesn't, I guess promote it that much. But so I went out and I no joke, this is a true story. I hired a film crew that was primarily composed of like high schoolers because it's all I could afford. But we banded together to get like the coolest cameras that we could. And we had a green screen that we put lights everywhere. And I shot like no, that's not true. I guess it was a 9-part video on how to get from like step 1 all the way to the end to finalize everything. And I posted it everywhere. I mean, all of social media. I mean, it's still there today. We actually updated it. And it was the funniest thing. We have a lot of individuals who will reach out to us through social media and we'll have those conversations with them. But every month there's at least somebody who's like, is that really? Because I provided the links to the documents. I was like, hey, just take them. If you're going to do it yourself, at least just have everything. And so, everyone, when I shot that, I mean, we had attorneys who had been around for 20, 30 years who I had almost no relationship with, just passing by, who actually went out of their way and said, you're going to ruin the industry. Why are you doing that? How are you going to be able to make ends meet and on and on and on. And I just thought, well, I've got 7 followers on Instagram. So, what's the worst that can happen? And fast forward, we've got thousands and thousands of views on those. But I mean, it's something that, again, almost a passion project, but it was, why are we hiding this information? Why does the industry feel like that is the right move? And if we just talk to somebody, like a normal person and said, look, maybe I won't go to court for you because you're not going to hire me, but there are these documents out here. You can do it. And, walking them through and it was a lot of fun. It was the first time I'm going on a tangent, but it was the first time I was actually in front of a camera. Like the whole thing is really funny looking back on now, but that was creative. More recently, we built the AI firm, and that was based entirely off of, I want to do this for the firm, and I think that this would be an industry changer. And then it was very successful. And then I had good friends who they were going out of business, and they were struggling to find anything that could help them, that they could actually afford to help capture leads that went to their page or website or whatever that maybe they wouldn't call. And that's when I thought, well, it wasn't a secret. It wasn't anything special. I just, this is what we did. And all of a sudden, it worked, and it, worked across industries, and we started building it. But, there's that, and there's probably a handful more. I'm trying not to go on too many soapbox.
That's all good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good. I only have one last question, and then I'll give you a chance if you have any final questions before we get practical and then wrap up and let Chris go. Chris, it's the Frustrated CEO podcast. So what keeps you awake at night?
Yeah, great question. I can tie this into a lot of different things. It's different these days where I'm at now versus when I got started. On what keeps me up, I think when you get started, a lot of the time is, can I afford to keep going? It's very, monetary to make sure that you can keep it going. I think today what keeps me up is, I think more about, are we doing the right thing? Are we getting there the right way? We use a law firm as an example. We get into 5 different states in 4 years in business. That's really fast. I mean, that's crazy fast, especially for a law firm. And so that can scare anybody into making, that's great, but are we doing it the right way? We're not just expanding, but, our clients are incredibly happy and they want to stay, we want them to stay happy. And obviously, I want them to be our biggest fans. And so I spent a lot of time, not so much, I don't want to say worrying, but I probably spend most of my time thinking, how do we give a better experience? How do we improve? What are we not doing that I think we are, but no one's really called me out on it, and it hasn't come to me yet that we're not as good as I think we are at certain things. And so it's a lot of internal audits, honestly, of trying to make sure that we can capture what we're failing at before it becomes a big problem. And that is what stands out to me probably the most.
That's any final questions for Chris before we you shaking your head?
Nope, that was a good one to end on.
Yeah, it was a good one. All right. So listener, this is our 83rd episode. You know the drill. This is the part where we get practical. We like to ask the question, what are some things that our listener can take from our conversation today, or maybe things we didn't talk about that they can implement in their business starting tomorrow to try to make progress, try to grow, try to wow their customer or build the culture, or anything we talk about. Chris, we'll give you the opportunity to go first, so we don't take all the good ones and leave you scratching your head. What comes to mind? 2 or 3 pieces of advice you would give a listener?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think, the first thing that comes to mind is, who do I know that can get me where I want to go 100 times faster? And so, what I've been very fortunate with is that, I've been able to surround myself with people who are incredibly successful at certain things. Maybe it's social media, or maybe it's, in the property management side, finding properties, and the AI side, maybe it's coding or running SaaS companies. It's finding those people who are so further along ahead, who are great mentors. How do I connect with them and take their advice and go from there to get me to where I'm trying to go 100 times faster? Because if I had to learn it myself, I don't know how you guys are, but I'll learn it the hard way every time. I never get to learn it the easy way. And so if I can grab resources that I already learned it the hard way, and I can just, get them to help, that's really what I would say. That's a good starting point is to find those individuals. And then, the second, or for me, I guess the last thing, I would say, when people show you who they are, believe them. And so it's really, it's tough in the business world. Everyone is trying to, capture more and more business. And so, it's tough to trust people. I think at a certain point, everyone kind of becomes a little paranoid. And I think it's paramount that you pay attention to who people are, and when they tell you or show you, believe them, and go from there. So I'll leave that to you all.
That's good. Thank you, Patsy. You want to go?
There were so many. Let's see. Yes. No matter what your position, but especially as a CEO, you can't be the person who has all the answers.
Mm-hmm.
I love to keep creativity alive, challenge this status quo I wrote every day, but probably every minute and every day, and know your core values.
I have a few. Gosh, how am I going to narrow them down? I'll have to narrow them down. Okay. Let's see. I like this one that you, Chris, you talked about this early, came from a friend of yours. Just remember who's going to carry the casket. So what really matters, build a team that shares that belief with you, and then and the team that will be with you to the end. I thought that was interesting. I will say I love this too. If success takes a little longer, but it means that if it means a better work-life balance, then maybe that's something you ought to consider. Because as I like to say, everything has a cost. So sure, you can get there sooner, but right, if it comes at the cost of work-life balance or the cost of missing some of those, the kids things, or then maybe the cost is higher than what you're considering. And maybe the last one I'll say is, like you said, learn to love the process. Again, where you started, learn to love the process. The start is not where you're going to end up, and the smallest change can have the biggest effects. It can lead to some of the biggest impact. So anybody want to add anything else that we left out?
I do.
Okay.
That my words, not Chris's, but the value of promoting, I call it inquiry and explaining options. So open-mindedness, which is not being an open door, to explore better ways. And when hiring, pay more attention to character, or pay attention to character first, and then maybe qualifications.
That was also good. I'm going to add, Chris said this earlier, you're in the hospitality business. You're in the hospitality business no matter what industry you're in, and it would probably behoove you to remember that. Chris, anything you want to add that we left out?
No, I think y'all did great. Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Of course. All right, before we let you go, if anybody is local to Kentucky, some of the other, you go ahead and talk about the states that you're in, and needs family law services, what's the best way to get in touch with Wise and Associates?
Yeah, so our website's wiseafl.com. That's probably the easiest way to reach out to us. And then, we have various offices depending on where you are, and happy to have a conversation and help you if we can.
Yep. And if any listener out there is looking to improve their lead capture and conversion process and is interested in the AI stuff that you're doing through Greenlight Sales, what's the best way to reach you?
Yeah, so best way to reach us, typically through social media on any of them, with Greenlight Sales. Our website is actually greenlightsads.com, which is a fun story. I know we don't have time for it today, but that's probably the fastest way to reach us is through social or through that website right there.
Awesome. Chris, thank you for joining us today. Yes. It was insightful and fun.
It was.
I was glad to get this one recorded. Patsy, thank you so much for
pleasure.
Another fantastic support. You're awesome. And listener, thank you for sticking with us to the end of another episode of the Frustrated CEO podcast. You can find this Let's Get Practical on our website, along with all of our prior episodes and all of our prior Let's Get Practicals. You can also find us on LinkedIn. Do a search in the search bar for the Frustrated CEO podcast and connect with us there. And then I'm sure you can connect with Patsy and me and with Chris on LinkedIn as well. So we invite you to do that. And we invite you to tune in next time to the Frustrated CEO podcast. We'll see you soon.